morning, everyone. I'm Neal Suntken with HDR. I'm an associate principal there for our education and science markets. For those of you that don't know HDR, we're an architecture and engineering company, international, but we are based and headquartered here in Omaha. So I'm not a scientist, I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm an architect. So that always draws some weird eyebrows and faces at these type of conferences. But I'm excited here to lead a discussion on how physical space can help spur innovation, and we've got a great crew of panelists here to help explain their experiences. Omaha and the Great Plains are at the forefront of innovation and development in industrial, biomanufacturing, and agricultural research and technology. In Nebraska, we spent over $350 million in venture capital investments in startups focused on ag tech and advanced manufacturing. There are government, industry, nonprofit, and joint initiatives such as the Combine at the Nebraska Innovation Campus in Lincoln that support high-growth entrepreneurs in food, agriculture, and science. There are new developments devoted to sustainable production strategies, such as the new USDA ARS National Center for Resilient and Regenerative Precision Agriculture at the University of Lincoln, which brings together the government, higher education, and researchers, as well as industry entities. This first phase recently broke ground there. You might have seen that on TV and the paper. We'll certainly probably discuss that a little more in those efforts here later today. There are research parks and innovation districts as well, located adjacent to the university and other healthcare entities that can provide physical space to allow and encourage collaboration and innovation between researchers and entrepreneurs. These are just a few examples of many, and evidence that much of this successful development is contributed to the environment here in the Midwest. So I'd like to dive into how this happens, but first we'll introduce our panel. I'll start with Kate.
Awesome, thank you, Neal. Good morning, everybody. Kate Engel, Executive Director, Nebraska Innovation Campus. We are located in Lincoln, Nebraska, and we are the University of Nebraska's research park. And our facility is designed to facilitate new and in-depth partnerships between the University of Nebraska and private sector businesses. And really, our campus strives to provide organizations with access to research, to faculty, to facilities, and students as well.
Great, thank you. Nigel?
Yeah, I'm Nigel Reuel. I'm an associate professor of chemical and biological engineering at Iowa State University, which is in Ames, Iowa, 2.5 hours due east. I wear many hats. One is we have a $20 million grant from NSF to build up biomanufacturing capacity in the state of Iowa. And I help facilitate tech transfer, so basic innovations going out into startups and licensed to established companies. I myself have done 3 biotech startups and have taken advantage of spaces adjacent to the university, and it's very critical for that. So happy to be on this panel.
Thank you. Chad?
Chad Beeson with Rainwood Development Partners. I've been blessed to be in the industry here for about a little over 30 years, so excited to be here with these leaders in the industry with this discussion. But at Rainwood, we spend a lot of time in project management, kind of commercial development. We spend a lot of time focusing on the process itself, which we'll talk about a little bit today, kind of team development and public-private partnerships is where we spend some time.
Great. Marianne?
I'm Marianne. I actually wrote notes on how to introduce myself, and it just says, you know who you are. My name's Marianne Phillippi. I'm with the Waymaker Group. We're a tech-based economic development consultancy agency. My role with them is as their funding specialist. So my background is actually in academic research. If you've been in academic research, you know that you have to write grants for your living. That's where I cut my teeth in writing grants. I now have expertise with NSF, NIH, EDA, SBA, all of the big players, USDA. I specialize in the large coalition grants now. So folks might be familiar with NSF Convergence, NSF Engines, Build Back Better, EDA Tech Hubs. Those are the ones that we work on at Waymaker Group. Just really passionate about connecting people for innovation spaces.
Great, well thank you guys all for joining me today. Let's start with this. We're just gonna go through some questions, let each of the panelists kind of give their viewpoint. So First question is going to be, how does biomanufacturing or agricultural research innovation space with multi-interest stakeholders, sometimes with different goals, come to be? And maybe talk a little bit about your role that you've played in this type of development. So Kate, let's start with you. I know I mentioned the National Center at UNL a little bit ago. Maybe talk how your role was there with that and how that came to be, and maybe some other projects that you're involved with.
Sure, thank you, Neal. So late in 2020, Nebraska Innovation Campus was named as the location for the USDA ARS National Center. As Neal mentioned earlier, it is the National Center for Resilient and Regenerative Precision Ag. We will probably refer to it as the National Center for the rest of this conversation, just because that is the longest title ever. It's really been a huge honor to receive that project being located on Innovation Campus, and certainly an exciting project for the university, for Innovation Campus, but also for our state. This will be the first national center, obviously located here in Nebraska. So that center is going to be home to world-leading research and development focused in ag tech, precision agriculture, and then other areas that are really critical to the future of agriculture innovation, especially here in the state of Nebraska. And phase one, if you were to drive by the site today, we have some grading done and a lot of pipe work coming in for the infrastructure. But phase one is a USDA ARS head house and greenhouse. So that'll be the first facility that will come out of the ground. We're working closely with HDR on that as that comes out. And then phase two will be a lab office building that also we worked with HDR on the design for that. So these are the first two federally funded and owned buildings that will be on the campus. So we also have learned a lot about a federal project and what that looks like, and all of the partners that are involved in that process. So that's definitely been an interesting learning opportunity as we've worked through all of that for that to be on the campus. But like several of the other efforts and facilities on campus, this project is just another great example of partnerships that have a positive impact on Nebraska and beyond. And we're really excited to be working in the areas of ag tech research, workforce development, and startup activity here in the state of Nebraska. It takes a lot of partners to do that.
I know, Mary Ann, the Waymaker group has also been involved in multiple innovation districts. How have you experienced working with multiple parties and maybe the multiple goals of those parties?
I mean, it's herding cats. That's exactly what it's like. If every cat was an experienced leader who was very used to getting their own way all the time. So barging in, being bossy, telling them that you know what's best never works. We really like to start with discovery in the region, so identifying what are their best assets. And then we move into basically being a matchmaker for relationships. So it's all about finding those connections between researchers, between industry players, other stakeholders, kind of making those connections that haven't happened in the region yet, and finding that shared vision. Because what's most important we're seeing, like with cats, is if you can find the one thing that they can all agree that they want, they'll go after it in that same direction. And then everybody starts rowing the boat in the same direction, and you get that beautiful aha moment. And this happened in Oklahoma City. We helped them win their $35 million Build Back Regional Challenge award a couple of years ago now. We're happy to say that implementation's going really well, but it was putting together different disciplines, different partners, and giving them that shared vision that led to this really beautiful innovation district that's now super vibrant.
Wonderful. Chad, I know Rainwood works across the real estate continuum, so maybe you could talk a little bit about how you see these projects come to be and what role you're specifically playing.
You bet. Well, we do try to focus a lot on higher education and kind of campus planning. That is a primary sector for ours that we like to focus in. So our goal is very similar to Mary Ann, just maybe a little bit down the line a little bit, is just how do we connect folks, whether it's the innovation group and that side and the folks that have the ideas, and then working with campus leadership on how do we work together on those similar strategic partnerships and those developments and get them together. So whether it's a local or a national smaller startup or a big research leader in the industry. Again, we're trying to bring them together and collaborate on their space, what those space needs are, whether it's a laboratory or a makerspace or whatever those may be, and trying to figure out that synergy and how we can put that plan together.
Great. Nigel, you get to come this from a little unique perspective. As a startup founder yourself and professor, how do you ensure in any partnership or developments that you're part of that the goals are able to be achieved?
Yeah, well, the goals of a young startup are very simple: to get revenue and stay in business as long to actually make an impact. So in terms of space, having an efficient allocated space where you can grow into it as you grow, where you can share resources, where you can have collaboration, those are all important. And I think also just having some forethought in that. A lot of spaces we've been in have come after a long time and established success of other founders exiting and putting back into the ecosystem. But it's nice now that we're thinking ahead of that and making it more of a catalyst to further that.
Great. All right, new question. Is there anything particular about the Great Plains that helps get it done? Who are those facilitators in this region? Let's start with Chad this time.
Yes, well, for us, we use this terminology a lot in that the Midwest, and maybe even more specifically, Nebraska is just kind of different. There's just a desire here to partner and a consistent effort to how do we make Nebraska better, whether it's a campus leadership, whether it's a philanthropic group that we're involved with, or even the private sector. How do we come together and enhance workforce development, other types of innovation from that perspective? So there's just a unique blend that we see here that makes things work. It's hard to explain when you're not here and you don't get to experience it, but we've been blessed and saw a lot of that develop, and even what Kate's doing down in Lincoln is pretty magnificent on just kind of all of the different partners that have come together, whether it be federal or local, to make some of these dreams happen.
Great. Nigel, what is your experience?
Yeah, unique perspective. My first startup was out of the Massachusetts area, and it was a very different experience than the startups that I've been able to achieve here. One is just the fact of this unification of the region and state and local authorities trying to get it, have it make impact. So all those resources aligning in one direction has been helpful. And just the fact that we can be very cost efficient out here. I can get an SBIR award and actually make it last and pay for things rather than having it all be away in a very expensive incubator system. And just, and this has come up a couple times in this conference, the local mentality of hard work, ethic, and loyalty to the company has been fantastic.
Great. Kate?
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Chad said in the idea of partners, right? We have been so fortunate at Nebraska Innovation Campus to have people say yes to wild ideas, that we can reach out and say, hey, what about collaborating on this? What would you think about going after this grant? What would it look like if we were able to bring a USDA National Center to Lincoln, and all of those types of things? And somebody else typically says, yes, that seems, we would like to work with you on that. And so that collaborative spirit and the partnerships all across the region, like Chad said, whether that's local, state, even at the federal level, has been really, really rewarding. And we certainly wouldn't be where we are or able to offer the facilities or the programs or the events that we have without a really strong set of partners.
All right. Marianne?
Yeah, I'll just add on to partnerships for sure, but also the quality of those partnerships. I think the Midwest has a really unique ability to bring the expertise and the wealth of knowledge about the land itself from our rural partners and all of their agricultural experience, and blend that with the cutting edge research that we do at UNL, and then our friends at Iowa as well, where we're friends until it's football game day, and then then we go back to being friends when it's all over. But when we can bring that all together with important facilitators like our economic development folks that are helping put this on together, universities, tech transfer are really, you're lucky if you're in a state like ours where you have forward-thinking government, where they're actually trying to align with national priorities and provide those incentives. I can't tell you how many clients we've had that have really wanted to go after some of these big dollars and start bringing up in innovation districts, but their government at a state level, they don't have the right support and they can't do it. And so we're really lucky here in the Midwest to be able to say that we do have forward-thinking government that are incentivizing and are supporting these initiatives. And then just a shout out to our nonprofits like Nebraska, our players that can really bring together everybody on neutral ground, cut through the bureaucracy and the politics, and get everybody having those conversations about how we move forward with a shared vision.
Great. Let's turn a little bit to kind of the space and adjacencies. Can you talk about what's important in terms of space and adjacencies and how each of your perspective and roles in that innovation has been? I'll go back to you, Marianne.
Oh, gosh. Okay, back to back. Flexibility and connectivity. Those are the two big things that we're seeing. Like, technology evolves at breakneck speeds. I'm going to age myself, but I'm still holding on to my Sony Discman, and like, we're so far beyond that. Technology just moves so fast, I can't ever keep up. Our space needs to be able to keep up and adapt and be flexible as well. When you're talking about adjacencies, I think it's really important that we're neighboring disciplines that are different but also collaborative. So we want our R&D next to our prototyping. We want our startups to have access to mentors. We really want to see all of these different disciplines side by side in a natural convergence approach, where we can see that convergence magic happen. And then informal spaces. It's really, really important to have just lounges, outdoor spaces, caffeine. That's where you get the introverts out, and they're actually going to collide with an extrovert that will be like, hey, I'll do all the public talking for you if you've got a great idea. Those natural conversations. And I think Kate, who does that day to day, is going to be able to talk about the importance of that.
Sure, happy to. So Nebraska Innovation Campus, for those of you that may not be familiar with our campus, we have 570,000 square feet of constructed space to date. And it's very diverse space. So it includes office space, a maker space, a teaching and research hotel, the coffee shop, the ever important connecting coffee shop, as well as lab space, pilot plant space, and also greenhouse space. So we spend a lot of time thinking about space and place and how it's going to create those unplanned collisions and connections that Marianne mentioned. So how do we have 1,200 people on campus? That's great. We love to have them there, but how do we get them out of their offices? How do we get them interacting? How do we get them engaging with each other? Because we really believe that that's where the innovation comes from. Maybe it's a student runs into a CEO of a Fortune 50 company. They have a conversation, and we don't know what comes out of that, but we believe it will be something innovative. Maybe there's an event that's hosted that brings, again, a really diverse group of people together to have those conversations. Maybe it's something that happens in the maker space. So everything from formal space to informal space, we really think about how it's going to facilitate those unplanned conversations and collisions.
Chad, I think you maybe have seen some of the same experiences, but maybe on a little different level.
Very much so, and eerily similar to what Kate is saying is just innovation is collaboration, right? And so often here in these last few years, for a lot of different reasons, we've got stuck behind the screen. So I think what we're seeing is that it is so much better when you're able to be face to face and we're able to talk across the table and work on solutions and things like that. There's nothing wrong with being via Zoom and the like, but I think we've seen that how important the brick and mortar piece of this is, because we're able to bring these folks together and get them around the table and start talking all on the same page.
Nigel, obviously different environments are more conducive to scaling up from an incubator and startup standpoint into permanent physical space. What have you kind of seen as maybe the secret sauce to some of your success?
Yeah, I'm echoing much of what's been already said. Having a modular space is important because you start out, you might need a bench, a half a bench, a desk. And then as you achieve milestones, that grows and you need more and more. And so being able to scale accordingly and have that cost scale accordingly is very helpful to a young company. But again, just having that symbiotic relationship with everyone around you. A startup is like a consortium of microbes, right? We all need each other. One person's waste is your input, and so very much so. And there's a shared mentality of capital equipment, spaces that have equipment that can be shared use or have available is very effective. And then all these kind of collisions of sharing know-how, sharing network contacts for investors, et cetera, are effective, and just collaborative feeling sharing too of the successes of highs and lows of running a company. And then also when I think about effective spaces, thinking about wraparound services, ones that also co-locate law, patent law, accounting, a lot of the things that large established companies eventually grow and have in-house, having those co-locate and be able to be available on a time basis with young companies is highly effective.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about the process, and maybe each of you can touch on the importance of the role of consultants, including architects, engineers, the financing arm, the planners, and the development of some of these areas. Chad, maybe let you start.
You bet. Well, I think oftentimes for us, the biggest hurdle that we see during this development process is oftentimes it's easy for us to get ahead of ourselves. We're so excited about the idea or the research, or we've got some self-imposed deadline that we have to continue to push for, that we get ahead of ourselves, right? And I don't think we know what that means until we struggle through that. So for us, it's how do we put this right team together for this specific project? We want this team to be able to serve that its best. That's the key. So in our role, we're trying to align those teams, right? Whether it's an HDR and another construction group, and how that meshes with that specific project. Because a lot of us want to say, hey, I can do everything, right? And so I think for us in our world, we're trying to figure out, I know you can, I know you're amazing, but maybe this is your best fit because I know what that client needs from that perspective. So staying within that process, and as a consultant, it's our job to kind of help maintain that process, because even if we're feeling some short-term gain by skipping a step, it always catches up with us in the end, and we end up taking us a little bit longer or spend a little bit more money, which none of us have. So,
Nigel, what's your experience been as a startup?
Yeah, less so. So I don't have the luxury of designing a new building. I wish I did. But definitely when that comes to pass, getting input on what type of work is going to be involved, because retrofitting is always the most kind of time and cost limiting factor. So just knowing, if there's chemistry work involved, having enough duct work and hoods and, those types of logistics.
Great. Kate?
Yeah, so Nebraska Innovation Campus wouldn't exist without the whole host of people that you listed in your question, right? We had to have some really creative and thoughtful people who said, yes, let's take a former state fairground and turn it into a research park. So we have 2 historic buildings on the site, and everything else is new construction. So as we thought through and worked through with that whole group of planners and architects and all of that, thinking, how do we make sure that our new construction fits in well with 2 historic buildings that are very well recognized by the people of the state and who love them dearly and want to know that they are doing well? How do you put a brand new building next to a 100-plus-year-old building and make sure that that looks good together and that they fit together? Literally, we have some buildings a new building sitting in an old building, in a historic building. So how does that work? What is the structure? What happens with all of those things? So that process for us would not have been possible without architects, designers, planners, creative people, and again, a whole host of folks that said yes to what may have seemed like a really big and audacious project.
Thank you. Marianne?
Yeah, I'm going to step up a little bit higher level too, and outside of just a single building, but a research park or an innovation district as a whole. Again, going back to herding cats, got to get them all in the same direction. It starts with a value proposition. What kind of space do we want to create? What do we want to accomplish? And so then bringing in a consultancy agency like mine, Waymaker Group, where you do that kind of SWOT analysis at a regional level. What are the assets? What are the tech clusters? What are the economic opportunities? And then we bring in consultants like HDR for our architects and engineering that take that vision, that take that idea, and they turn it into a physical space that's functional. Sorry, I'm not close enough, am I? They said get close. I didn't know how close they really meant. Then you need your financing and your funding folks, because without money, a great idea just stays a great idea. That's where it stops. So you've got your folks that know how to find the money, either at a federal level, at a state level, philanthropic donations, all of that good stuff. And then you need your planners to make sure that everything fits into the broader community and it makes sense and that we're compliant. And then, yeah, you've got your other consultancy agencies that are like project managers and making sure it all fits together and runs on time. It's a super complex dance, but very rewarding when you see it all come together.
Great. All right, one last question, then we'll see if we have any time for some Q&A. What are your markers of a successful development, and can you talk both about the attributes and the results? Kate?
Sure. So obviously we have some very formal metrics that we follow with square footage completed, number of companies, all of those types of things. But I think when I think about what makes our development successful, it's when I walk through hallways and see people using the space as we hoped they would use it, or coming to us saying, hey, we have an idea of how we can use this space. Could we move forward with that? So whether that's, after a conference, somebody steps out in the hallway for an informal meeting and they're enjoying a public art exhibit that we have up and having a conversation about that, or you see people connecting in those informal spaces, or gathering outside in the plaza, or walking the walking paths that we have. A lot of times for me, that's really the sign of success, is that the people are using the space as we had hoped, or even sometimes using it in ways that we hadn't hoped, but it works.
Great. Nigel?
Typical markers of success. So you get a repeat customer or a referral to a friend. So if you have a space and you've successfully exited and you have an idea for a new company, choose to do it there again. It's a good space.
Great. Marianne?
Okay, this is where the nerdy scientist in me starts to come out, because I'm like, oh, you can have so much data. It's long-term, short-term. We're really looking at that immediate impact, but then also what's the potential for long-term growth. And then we get into qualitative and quantitative data. So quantitatively, you really like to look at like number of startups that are spinning out, patents, research dollars that are being earned, cross-pollination and adaptability, again, from putting those different disciplines side by side, how many new ideas are being generated. And then the qualitative aspect as well. Is this innovation district recognizable? Are you starting to hear about it in regions that aren't the region that they started? And so that's really, are they now a market and a brand in and of themselves?
Great. Chad, I'll let you wrap this one up.
You bet. I think for us, a lot of what we do and all of us do is problem solving, right? So when we start a process or begin that process, we're looking to understand what that client's expectations and goals are. And so we're asking questions like, what will make this development successful? What is success in your vision? What is your vision in your eyes? So as we get those and establish that, we can use those during this decision-making process, because there's always going to be a moment where you have a budget item or something we need to navigate. So then we step back, we ask ourselves, does this decision negatively or positively impact some of those goals that we have? And so that kind of makes things easier when you have those conflicts, because we're always going to have those conflicts, right? And so if we're able to do that successfully, then your project's on time and under budget, right? Another cliche we have, but it's important to all of us.
Great. Well, I think we've got just a minute or so left. Maybe just open it up. Does anyone have any questions for the panel that we can answer? All right. Well, thank you. Hopefully we were able to share some of our insights and experiences. It can give you a little bit better understanding about some of these spaces that can help foster collaboration, but especially between academia and research and government and startup entities. So on behalf of HCR, I want to thank all of our panelists, and especially to Paul and BioInnovations for letting us be here today with you guys. So thank you.